thing that all of you certainly know about is the matzah, which is at the center of the Haggadah and of the Passover ceremonies. But interestingly, at the very beginning of the Seder, we say halachma anya. This is the bread of affliction, right? Why is it the bread of affliction? Well, many of you probably have heard because the Israelites didn't have enough time for it to rise. But that's not what the text says. The text says this is the bread of affliction that the Israelites ate in Egypt. Why would you eat this stuff in Egypt? Because you have no time for it to rise, because you are slaves. And slaves have no control over their own time. Time is the essence of freedom versus slavery. If you are a slave, you don't control your time. You don't know when and what you're going to have to do. You are under constant pressure. When you're free, you have time. And many of us who are retired are taking advantage of this as freedom. But as we will see, it's not quite what freedom is all about. I'll get back to that shortly. Now, the second major highlight of the Seder, all of you may know it by the Yiddish name Firkashes, or you may know it by the Hebrew name Arba Kushiot, or you may know it by the English name, the Four Questions. And the first of those questions is about the matzah, but the introduction is something that many of you may know. I wonder in what language you know it. Does anyone know it in Yiddish? In Yiddish? No. Oh, I'm surprised. I don't know Yiddish, but I've heard it so many times. It starts out sort of like this. For was ist die Nacht von Pesach anders von alle Nachten de ganz Jahr? Why is the night of Passover different from every night in the year? And we start with the four questions, each of them pointing to a strange practice of Pesach. And it's not just about different foods. Everything we eat or do is a symbol. The matzah I've talked about already. The second question is about this thing. Anybody recognize that? When we checked out of the supermarket, the guy behind the counter said, "What's that?" And he had to look it up. Well, this is horseradish, and it's called in Hebrew maror. And maror, this one has had some pieces chipped off because that's what we ate during the Seder. We didn't try to chew on this. This was sitting on the plate in the middle. And the maror symbolizes the bitterness of life in Egypt. And that's why we eat from it. Now, won't do too much more show and tell. There is a song that I'm positive you all know. All of you here and all of you somewhere on 1340. And that's a song that grew out of the identification of the slaves in America with the Israelites in Egypt. I'll start it and I'll bet you can continue. When Israel was in Egypt land, my people go, so oppressed so hard they could not stand, let my people go. Now there's something very interesting about this song. You would think that it comes directly from the biblical text. And in fact, Moses went down to Egypt and asked Pharaoh, but he didn't ask him, let my people go. He asked them, Shalach et ami v'ya'avduni. Send my people out that they can worship me. Now, there's a big difference between letting someone go and sending them. When you send someone, you're sending them on a mission. They have something to do, and that's what Pharaoh was being asked to do. Send them out so they could worship me. What did worship me mean? Change the way they live, improve the world, do things. And that's the message of being let go. And certainly over the years, though we still sing, Let My People Go, those who sing it are no longer just interested in being let free with nothing special to do, but they have a mission to improve their lives and the lives of those around them. Now, the next major feature of the Seder is the 10 plagues. I think we all know about the 10 plagues, and we all have a ritual that goes with it. You sing Dam, Tzvardea, Kinim, and I see the hands going with the people around here, right? You have wine in front of you. We drink 4 cups of wine for 4 different reasons. I'm not talking about that today. But some people, I see a lot of people here use their pinky. That's what we do too. And you dip the pinky in, and then you throw a drop of the wine on the plate, or if you want to be nasty, on your host's tablecloth. Now, why do we do that? The plagues, we're rejoicing about the plagues that the Egyptians suffered with. But why we do it, I have to go to a rabbinic story. And the rabbinic story says, when the Egyptians were all drowning in the Red Sea, the Israelites had gotten across and the water is closed on the Egyptians and they're drowning. And the angels in heaven, the story says, were rejoicing. What a wonderful thing. And God turned to them and said, why are you rejoicing? My people are dying and you're rejoicing. And that fits with the Dam, Tzvardea, blood, frogs, lice, and so on. You're trying to take away some of your joy with taking out some of the wine. We can't purely rejoice in the suffering even of our enemies. This year, we finished the 10 plagues with an 11th plague. We all said, Corona, because the world has been suffering another plague, and we want to commemorate and express our sorrow for all those who have died or suffered, families that have suffered from Corona. There's lots more to say there, but there's also next year. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That was wonderful. Shalom is just full of information. Next, we're going to have some readings by Adele Wachowski.
I'm reading actually from a pamphlet that my brother, Alav Shalom, he's no longer alive, wrote in 1962. in Cleveland, Ohio. It's called Warsaw and Jerusalem, a Haggadah for our time, but I'm only going to read one short paragraph. Perhaps the central statement in the Passover Haggadah is that each man must see himself as if he personally went forth from Egypt, as if he, though separated by centuries from those who trekked through Sinai, were nonetheless with them, part of the wandering horde out of which the people was forged, and part of the time when its enduring ethical insights were given their first expression. Through the centuries, we retell the story of the bondage and the liberation until the act and form of the retelling becomes itself a meaningful episode, a thing to be remembered, a tradition to be preserved, and thus we add a new strand to the fabric of historic memory.
Thank you, Adele. Next, we're going to have 4 different folks speak to us about their memories of Passover. I'll name the 4 people, and then you can come up after the person previous to you has finished. Bill Barbash will speak first, then Artie Raphael, then Ina Porteroff. I hope I said your name right. No, could you tell me? Potoff. I'm sorry. And June Feiner. Let's start with Bill.
I'm going to talk about a childhood Seder memory, something that remains very vividly in my head from many years back. The yearly Passover Seders were with my paternal grandparents. They went on for many years, initially for the first 2 nights of Passover, and then for only the first night, as my grandmother Bertha yielded to her own aging and the difficulty of preparing for a group as large as 16 people. No shortcuts or help were taken by her with the food preparation, from the gefilte fish to the honey and sponge cake at the end of the meal. We would gather at my grandparents' home, and my father would start with his antics by repeatedly asking, quote, "Where's Pop?" That's grandpa to me. The start was usually delayed by Grandpa Jacob being at the synagogue for the Orthodox pre-Seder service. On his return, Grandpa was welcomed by my father with, quote, "About time you're back so we can get started and eat." My kind and gentle grandpa never appeared flustered, and he did get started quickly. I had an important place at the head of the table, sitting next to my grandfather, and I would admire his skill as he read the Haggadah in Hebrew. I was also given the task for the youngest child of asking the 4 questions. While Grandpa was reading, some side comments were usually made by my father, such as, "When do we eat? Oh, another false alarm with the wine, as we raised our wine glasses but were told not to drink yet. Here come the cannonballs, also known as the matzo balls, and the chicken soup." My father also tried to stir up a few of the family members at the table, particularly my Uncle Jesse's wife, Corinne, but she could dish it back to him. Aside from the Passover meal, I also remember the yellow raisin wine that was made by my grandpa for the kids. No vintage appellation, but it tasted good to me. At the end of the meal and prior to the dessert and tea, the ladies from the table helped clean up in the kitchen with resistance from my strong-willed grandmother. During this pause, something strange would occur. It was not so odd to me at that time, but seems strange to me now. My father would announce that, quote, "It was time to walk off the meal," and I was volunteered to accompany him. We would then travel the Bensonhurst streets of Brooklyn for what seemed like a long time, probably lasted about 10 to 15 minutes. In retrospect, I think the walk was his escape from the table conversation, or perhaps the lack of, during this interval of the Seder. Upon reconvening for the closing part of the ritual, I was impressed with the speed that Grandpa could get through the many remaining pages of Hebrew. I did observe that some pages must have been stuck together because many seemed to get flipped at the same time. So in a flash, we were eating our dessert.
Good afternoon, everyone. Some of you probably are wondering why I'm wearing a baseball cap. Usually, of course, at a Passover Seder, we usually don't talk about baseball or sports during a Passover Seder. It is a custom to ask, why is this night different from all other nights of the year? This Haggadah was given to me by a very good friend here in New Paltz. Haggadah is the story of Passover, but the theme of this Haggadah is baseball. And of course, April 1st, this week on Thursday, is the first game of Major League Baseball, with fans going to the stadiums to see the games. And of course, it's spring, and baseball begins during the Passover celebration. So I picked a section from the Haggadah, the story of Passover, that I would like to read to you. Every spring, Jews celebrate the Passover Seder and this festival of freedom. Baseball starts in the spring too. This Haggadah, as I said, that I am holding, is a book that we use to tell the story of Passover. Shows the Passover story as a baseball game. It's a long one with 15 innings. If you look hard enough, you might notice that another item on the Seder plate is the Shank Bone. And it looks sort of like a baseball bat, as you would tell the children at the Seder. The matzah balls, what do they resemble? Baseballs. The Haggadah contains many songs with numbers in them. We have to count at the Seder 4 questions, a story about 4 different kinds of children, 4 promises of taking the Israelites out of Egypt, 14 parts of the Seder, 14 parts of the Seder, 13 ways of describing God, the 12 tribes of Israel, and 1 baby goat. In baseball, what do? We count numbers too: strikes, balls, runs, errors, and averages. And even the positions of the players have on the field are assigned numbers. Well, I've talked long enough about the relationship, and I love baseball, and it's starting this week. We're going to end my talk, not really. I still have a few other things, but I'm going to we're going to sing a song. We're going to sing a song to the tune of, I'll sing it first, and then we'll sing it together as a group. I have words. Sharon, would you hand out the words to the song? The music is, everyone knows it, Take Me Out to the Baseball Game. Take me out to the ball game. Can I have one? All right, I'll sing the first time. and then we can sing it together. 1, 2, 3. Take me out to the Seder, take me out to the crowds. Feed me some soup with a matzah ball. Pesach's in spring and is not in the fall, for we'll root. Root for the Israelites as they cross right through the Red Sea. For it's 1, 2, 3, 4 cups of wine. We rejoice that we are free. Now let's do it one more time. 1, 2, 3. Take me out to the Seder. Take me out to the crowds. Feed me some soup with a matzah ball. Pesach's in spring and it's not in the fall, for we'll root it for the Israelites. Let's cross right through the Red Sea. For it's 1, 2, 3, 4 cups of wine. We'll rejoice that we are free. Now, I have one more item. I know my wife is ready to pull the hook on me. But my friend, I have another friend on Long Island who sent me 2 pages of humor. And Passover humor is quite weak and old as the hills, as he writes, but pleasant. I have one of the jokes that I would like to tell you. A British Jew is waiting in line to be knighted by the Queen. He is to kneel in front of her and recite a sentence in Latin when she taps him on the shoulders with her sword. However, when his turn comes, he panics in the excitement of the moment and forgets the Latin. Then, thinking fast, he recites the only other sentence he knows in a foreign language, which he remembers from the Passover Seder. Manish tano halaylo hazeh mikol haleilot. Puzzled, Her Majesty turns to her advisor and whispers, "Why is this night different from all other nights?" Thank you.
Bravo, bravo.
I've got to follow that. Mom would convert the cupboards and tape over the chametz closets. That's the non-Passover cabinets. And we had 2 sets of dishes because we were kosher. So we had 2 sets of Passover dishes. We had 2 sets of everyday dishes. So everything had tape on it. You always knew what was for Passover and what wasn't. And we had 2 sets of china, meat, dairy, and everything. We had 2 sets of pots. We had lined the refrigerator. She would line the stove. Everything was taken care of. I know it was holiday time when I came home from school and I opened up the front door and I was hit by the smell of chicken soup simmering on the stove. My Seders were rather unique. We had on average 45, maybe 48 people. My mother insisted on doing all the cooking herself since we were kosher. Our yearly guest consisted of a nun, Sister Mary, a Benedictine, and a gay couple. In the 70s, that wasn't too cool. We always had to explain to the sister about the gay couple, and that was a relationship that they got to be really good friends. And we had to, and one year after I got my license, I got sent to pick up Sister Mary, who took the train to the house to the Seder. And so I got to send to go pick her up.
And I decided to take my cousin, my little cousin, she was about 11 at the time, and I took her with me. And I said, come on, I hadn't seen her in a while, so let's take a ride and I'll spend some time with you. So she's in the car, we're driving, we go to Flushing to pick up Sister Mary. And she gets in the car and I said, Susan, you remember Sister Mary? And without missing a beat, Susan says, oh yeah, you wore the same thing last year. And that was my family. We just had all kinds of, we had baseball talk at the Seder table. So yes, it was interesting. We would make the Seders as much about family as we could about religion. My mother would make matzo balls, and we had a family tradition. We had a lot of traditions in my family. And we would pass them down over the years, and some of them are still being passed down, which is wonderful to see with the grandkids now that they're being taught. But one of them that my mom did was my mother would take an egg yolk and she would put it inside the matzo ball, and she would serve it up to for the kids. And if you got the matzo ball, if you got the egg yolk in the matzo ball, Grandpa had to pay. And my mother knew the matzo balls that had the egg yolks in them. How she knew one from the other, I don't know. But she always knew, and she always knew who to give it to. And she always knew which kids got them and which grown-ups got them. And it was amazing. And without telling anyone, she would hide the egg yolks and she would get to know. But one year we figured out that my mother made about 250 matzo balls over Passover. And she made the best matzo balls. They were light, they were fluffy, and they never came out like lead. We figured out one year, I cornered her and I said, what's your secret? I want to learn to make matzo balls. And she said, I'll tell you the secret. And she said, the secret is seltzer, ice cold seltzer, and you got to use a glass bowl. And you got to freeze the bowl first. And you got to work fast because the bowl is going to lose the chill. And you just got to keep working with it. And every batch has to be in a cold bowl. So you got to have a lot of cold bowls to work with. And I still associate smelling chicken soup with my childhood Seders. They were just the best. And to this day, we don't think anything other than having an assortment of people with having family gatherings and putting all the friends and family together.
The Seders that I remember most clearly occurred between the late 40s and early 50s, when I was about 11 until about 15. There was my parents and two sisters, we went to the Seders, which were held in the apartment of Auntie Dora and Uncle Manny, which was above their men's haberdashery store in Islington, London, which was pretty much a Jewish ghetto at that time. And also present was Auntie Betty, Uncle Morris, and cousins Tony, Julian, Daphne, and Joy. And we all sat around one very, very long table that was created by adding another smaller table to the end of their dining table. And of course, all the kids were seated at the far end of the table. And I don't know how much attention we actually paid to the service because we were just entertaining ourselves, sort of giggling and chatting throughout the whole thing. And the prayers seemed to go on forever and ever, even though Uncle Manny seemed to be reading the Hebrew text very fast. So we did all the traditional things. We passed around the matzah and the parsley dipped in salt water, the horseradish and the chosis, and everything was really quite good because we were starving by then. After that, we were served a hard-boiled egg in a bowl of salt water,
which was, I guess, to celebrate the spring and rebirth and the sorrow with the tears. And wine was served all around. Then chicken soup was knedlach, roast chicken, roast potatoes, and the vegetable. I don't remember the order. Then maybe there was the search for the Afikomen, more prayers, more wine, the plagues. I love doing the plagues. And the songs, the most memorable of which was the Kid for Tuzism. I like that one a lot. And at some point, dessert was served, honey cake, stewed fruit salad, and I think there was some final rather rushed prayers. It was quite late by then. And then, in fact, came one of the highlights of the evening. We had to go through the shop in order to get back to the car. And we always stopped to do some shopping. So every year, my father stocked up on his socks and ties and hankies. And my sister and I, we always got a couple of pairs of boys' pajamas. It was a men's haberdashery shop. And we would wear these boys' pajamas, flannel pajamas with stripes. And it was always a big question whether the blue stripe would predominate or the green stripe would predominate. So that was really a part of it. And then one year, there was a terrible pea soup fog going home. And I remember my sisters and I sort of, half asleep, but also frightened in the car. My mother had to get out with a torch, and she had to walk along in front of the car, lighting the curb, because those fogs were incredibly dense. And, eventually we got home, and it was all wonderful, and we put on our new pajamas and went to bed. Okay. Those recollections were wonderful. Thank you, the four of you. And Artie, thanks for your unusual presentation. We are going to end up now. Al is going to sing to us. And after that, I just want to wish you all a happy Pesach. Al.
I'd like to sing a traditional song about Elijah the prophet. It goes like this. And if you know the song, please join with me. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi, Bimhera v'yamenu, ovo elenu, Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben David, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi. Everyone have a Zisina Pesach.
Gretchen, the sheet for the announcement.
Oh, right, I had that. Yeah. Let's see if we can find them. Oh, okay.
I'd like to announce that this evening and tomorrow evening, March 30th and 31st, at 5 p.m. on channel 1340, there are two movies. Part one, May Christians Celebrate Passover? A question. May Christians celebrate Passover, Pesach? Rabbi Jonathan Kahn reveals the mystery of Passover and the Lord's Supper. The second part, part two, first unabridged video filmed in 2013 of Rabbi Jonathan Kahn leading through the Messianic Passover celebration at the Jim Baker Show. In this unique revelation of the oldest biblical feast, learn about the mysteries of Passover, including the 4 cups, the 3 matzah, the afikomen, the zeroah, the dipping, and much more. So I'll repeat this. There are 2 programs, part 1 and part 2, tonight, and the second part on Wednesday evening, of course, at 5 p.m. on channel 1340. It's a YouTube program, which I would recommend if you're hearing what the parts are about. Very interesting. So I thank you for your attention, and it was our pleasure to talk about Passover to all of you here at Woodland Pond. Thank you.
Oh, that was like Maria. That's great. That was great. I've got another one we had.